In the beginning, there was only mist. Mist that clung to mountain peaks like the breath of sleeping giants. Mist that carried whispers of what had been and dreams of what might come to pass. And in this mist, on a morning that existed before memory began to count the days, something stirred, something ancient, something that had been waiting in the earth itself for the right moment to reveal its purpose. Picture, if you will, the jagged spine of mountains that would one day bear witness to the greatest construction project in human history. See how the morning light filters through layers of cloud and vapor, casting shadows that dance across stone faces carved by wind and time. Here, in this liminal space between earth and sky, between dream and waking, the first stones of what would become the Great Wall of China were laid not by imperial decree, but by hands that trembled with visions they could barely comprehend. The ancient texts speak of dragons. Always they speak of dragons. But these are not the dragons of Western mythology, creatures of greed and destruction hoarding gold in mountain caves. No, these are the dragons of the East, beings of wisdom and elemental power, guardians of the balance between heaven and earth. And according to the oldest stories, stories that were old when Confucius was young, stories that existed in the oral tradition long before the first character was ever brushed onto silk, it was such a dragon that traced the path of the Great Wall across the landscape of China. The dragon's name, according to these whispered legends, was Longshen, the divine serpent of boundaries. In the time before time, when the world was still soft and malleable, Longshen descended from the celestial realm with a mission that transcended mortal understanding. The dragon's massive body, scaled in silver and jade, moved across the landscape like a living river of starlight, and wherever it passed, it left behind an invisible blueprint written in the very molecules of stone and soil. But why? What drove this celestial being to mark such a precise path across thousands of miles of varied terrain? The answer, like so many truths about the Great Wall, exists in the spaces between certainty and mystery. Some scholars suggest that Longshen was preparing the earth for a barrier that would be needed in ages yet to come, when the balance between the seen and unseen worlds would require physical manifestation. Others whisper that the dragon was actually fleeing something, and its serpentine path across China was an attempt to confuse or mislead whatever cosmic force pursued it through the void between stars. And still others, the mystics and shamans who have tended the mountain shrines for generations beyond counting, speak of a different truth entirely. They say that Longshen did not come to Earth at all, but rather awakened from within it. They claim that the dragon had always been there, sleeping in the deep places where tectonic plates meet and part, and that its stirring to consciousness created the very mountains and valleys that the Great Wall would eventually crown. Consider the mathematics of mystery. The Great Wall, in its complete form, stretches for more than 13,000 miles across China's landscape. To put this in perspective, that distance could wrap around the Earth's equator more than halfway. The wall crosses deserts and mountains, follows river valleys and ridgelines, adapts to terrain so varied that it seems impossible any single vision could have conceived its entire course. Yet, archaeological evidence suggests something that challenges our understanding of ancient construction capabilities. The oldest sections of walls that would eventually be incorporated into the Great Wall system show a level of geographical precision that shouldn't have been possible with the surveying tools available to Bronze Age civilizations. These early walls follow mathematical curves that account for the Earth's curvature, incorporate calculations about seasonal flooding patterns, and align with celestial bodies in ways that demonstrate knowledge of advanced astronomy. How did ancient builders achieve such precision? How did they coordinate construction across thousands of miles of difficult terrain without modern communication systems? How did they create a structure that seems to anticipate geographical challenges they shouldn't have been able to foresee? The dragon theory, dismissed by conventional archaeology as mere folklore, begins to sound less mythical and more like a metaphor for something our current understanding cannot quite grasp. Perhaps Longshen represents not a literal serpentine creature, but rather the personification of some kind of ancient technology or knowledge system that allowed prehistoric civilizations to accomplish feats that we, with all our modern capabilities, still find difficult to explain. The Warring States period, when the earliest versions of what would become the Great Wall were constructed, was a time of chaos and transformation. 7 major kingdoms fought for dominance across the Chinese landscape, each building walls to defend their territories from both human enemies and natural disasters. But even during this era of fragmentation and conflict, there was something that unified the construction efforts. A shared understanding that these walls were not merely military installations, but something far more significant. Ancient texts from this period, many of them fragmentary and cryptic, speak of the walls as dragon bones and serpent scales, suggesting that even the earliest builders understood their individual projects as components of something larger. They wrote of consulting oracles before beginning construction, of performing specific rituals at foundation stones, of incorporating materials that had been blessed by ceremonies we no longer understand. And they wrote of dreams. Always they wrote of dreams. Dream journals from the Warring States period describe recurring visions experienced by military engineers and construction foremen, dreams of vast serpentine forms moving across the landscape, dreams of voices speaking in languages that predated human speech, dreams of future ages when their walls would serve purposes they could not imagine. These dream records were considered so important that they were copied and preserved through dynastic changes, passed down through generations of builders like sacred texts. The morning mist that witnessed those first stones being laid in trembling reverence has long since dissipated. The hands that placed them have returned to dust. But the vision that guided them, whether it came from a celestial dragon, from some lost technology, or from the deep wisdom that sometimes emerges when human consciousness touches the eternal, it lives in every stone of the Great Wall, in every curve that follows the landscape's natural rhythm, in every watchtower that stands sentinel against the horizon. And as we begin our journey into the hidden secrets of this impossible construction, we must remember that we are not merely exploring human history. We are entering the realm where human ambition intersected with forces that remain largely mysterious to us. We are walking the path that Longshen traced in starlight and dreams, following footsteps that may have been made by something far more ancient and purposeful than we have yet learned to recognize. The dragon's first breath became humanity's greatest wall. And that wall, as we shall see, breathes still, in the deepest hours of night, when even the palace guards dozed at their posts and the weight of an empire settled into silence. Qin Shi Huang could not sleep. The first emperor of unified China would pace the marble floors of his chambers, his silk robes whispering against stone like autumn leaves disturbed by restless wind. Through latticed windows, he could see the lights of his capital stretching toward the horizon, 10,000 oil lamps flickering like earthbound stars, each one representing subjects who slumbered peacefully under his protection. But peace, he had learned, was the most elusive treasure in any emperor's vault. It was during these sleepless vigils that the visions came to him. Not dreams, for dreams require sleep, and sleep had become his enemy. These were waking visions, images that blazed across his consciousness with the clarity of lightning illuminating a storm-dark landscape. He saw walls, always walls. Walls that stretched beyond the curve of the earth, walls that rose higher than mountains, walls that pulsed with their own inner light like the veins of some massive, slumbering organism. But the walls in his visions were not built to keep armies out. They were built to keep something else in. Qin Shi Huang had unified the warring states through a combination of military genius, political cunning, and something that his enemies whispered about in fearful tones, an apparent ability to see into the future. His victories seemed too perfectly timed, his strategies too precisely calculated to be mere human intelligence. Captured generals, before their executions, would speak of fighting an enemy who anticipated their every move as if he had lived through the battle before. The truth, which the emperor confided only to his most trusted advisors, was more disturbing than his enemies imagined. The visions that guided his military campaigns were the same visions that now tormented his midnight hours, glimpses of possible futures that shifted and changed based on the decisions he made in the present. And in every future he could perceive, in every timeline that branched out from the moment of his reign, there was the wall, always the wall. The court astronomers had been summoned to explain what their calculations revealed about the celestial forces governing the emperor's reign. They spoke of dragon lines, invisible currents of energy that flowed through the earth like blood through a living body. They explained that the capital city had been positioned at the confluence of several major dragon lines, which accounted for the emperor's remarkable success in warfare and governance. But they also warned that these energy currents were becoming unstable. Something was stirring in the northern wastes, they said. Something that had slept for countless centuries was beginning to wake, and its awakening was disrupting the natural flow of cosmic energy through the landscape. The barbarian tribes beyond the northern borders were not merely raiding for plunder. They were fleeing from something that filled them with supernatural terror. Something that drove them southward like leaves before a hurricane, seeking refuge in lands that were already occupied by other peoples. The emperor's court magicians had consulted the I Ching, the ancient book of changes that revealed the hidden patterns underlying all transformation. The hexagrams they cast spoke of a coming convergence, a moment when the barrier between the world of the living and the realm of spirits would become dangerously thin. They spoke of hungry ghosts gathering in the northern darkness, entities that fed on human life force and grew stronger with each soul they consumed. But most disturbing of all were the prophecies that emerged from the Taoist hermits who lived in the mountain caves beyond the reach of imperial law. These wild-haired mystics, who claimed to have learned their arts from immortals dwelling in hidden valleys, brought messages that made the emperor's blood turn to ice in his veins. They spoke of ancient seals that were weakening, of cosmic cycles reaching their completion, of doors between dimensions that had been locked since the world began its current phase of existence. And they all agreed on one point: only a wall built according to very specific principles could serve as an effective barrier against what was coming. The wall, according to these mystical authorities, could not be merely a military fortification. It had to be constructed as a massive ritual instrument, a physical manifestation of spiritual protection that would channel the Earth's natural energies into a defensive barrier capable of repelling supernatural as well as human invaders. Every stone would need to be placed with ceremonial precision. Every section would require the incorporation of materials that had been blessed through ancient rites that predated written history. And most importantly, The wall would need to be built upon the foundation of something that modern minds find difficult to accept: human sacrifice on a scale that would imbue the structure with enough spiritual energy to function as intended. The emperor's court historians maintain discreet silence about certain aspects of the Great Wall's construction, but whispered stories persist in the villages that line its course. Stories about work crews that disappeared without trace, leaving behind only their tools and the echo of voices singing in languages no one recognized. Stories about foundation stones that seemed to bleed when touched by moonlight, and about sections of wall that hummed with their own internal music during the hours before dawn. Qin Shi Huang's obsession with immortality is well documented by conventional historians, who describe his quest for the elixir of eternal life as the eccentric hobby of a powerful man confronting his own mortality. But the hidden archives that survived the burning of books suggest a different interpretation. The emperor sought immortality not for personal reasons, but because the visions had shown him that his death would trigger catastrophic supernatural events that could destroy not just his empire, but human civilization itself. The Great Wall, in this interpretation, was never intended to be a permanent solution. It was designed as a temporary barrier that would hold back the forces of chaos until the emperor could achieve immortal status and assume his role as eternal guardian of the threshold between worlds. The wall was meant to buy time for him to complete his transformation from mortal ruler to something approaching divine status. But the alchemists failed him. Despite consuming countless experimental elixirs, despite consulting with Taoist masters and shamanic practitioners from the farthest reaches of his empire, despite building an underground tomb complex designed to house his immortal spirit, the emperor remained stubbornly mortal. And as his health began to decline, the visions became more urgent and more terrifying. In his final months, palace servants reported that the emperor spent entire nights standing on the highest tower of his palace, staring northward toward the wall, whose construction continued even as he lay dying. They said he spoke to someone who wasn't there, carrying on lengthy conversations in a voice so low that individual words could not be distinguished. They said he would sometimes laugh, but it was not the laughter of joy or even of madness. It was the laughter of someone who has seen the ultimate cosmic joke and finds it too terrible to comprehend. The emperor's final words, according to the single servant who remained in his chambers when death finally claimed him, were not about his empire or his legacy or his fear of mortality. His final words were, "The wall knows, the wall remembers, the wall will hold." Within hours of his death, strange phenomena began manifesting along the length of the Great Wall. Garrison commanders reported inexplicable sounds, the rumble of massive footsteps that shook the foundations of watchtowers but left no tracks in the surrounding earth. Border guards described seeing lights that moved along the wall's length at impossible speeds, traveling the entire distance from one end to the other in the space of a single night. And in the imperial archives, sealed documents that had been classified as too dangerous for general circulation began to spontaneously combust, as if the emperor's death had triggered some kind of supernatural failsafe designed to protect secrets that were too terrible for ordinary minds to contemplate. The wall that Qin Shi Huang built to contain his visions had become something more than stone and mortar. It had become a living repository of imperial terror, a physical manifestation of one man's attempt to hold back forces that existed beyond the boundaries of normal human experience. And as we shall see, the emperor's terrible vision was only the beginning of the wall's transformation from military fortification to something far stranger and more significant. The dragon had stirred, the emperor had responded, and the wall had awakened to purposes that its builders could never have imagined. In the spaces between wind and silence, in the pause between heartbeats, in the moment when day surrenders to night along the ancient stones, can you hear the voices of those who built the Great Wall with their bones and blood and the last whispered prayers that escaped their lips as they died? They have no names in the history books, no monuments mark their graves, no imperial scribes recorded their final words or counted the tears shed by their families when they did not return from the northern wasteland. They exist only as numbers in logistical reports. So many thousand peasants conscripted from this province, so many hundred prisoners of war transferred from that campaign, so many dozen political dissidents whose crime was questioning imperial policy at an inopportune moment. But numbers, however large, cannot capture the magnitude of what was sacrificed to build the Great Wall. We speak of millions, and the word rolls off our tongues as easily as water over stone. But each million was composed of individual human beings whose personal universes, their loves and fears and dreams and sorrows, were extinguished one by one in service to a vision they could not fully understand. The construction records that survived the burning of books describe a logistical operation of unprecedented scale. During peak construction periods, more than 1 million workers labored simultaneously on different sections of the wall. These were not volunteers seeking adventure or employment. They were conscripts, pressed into service by imperial decree and marched to construction sites from which many would never return. The peasants came first, drafted from farming communities across the empire. They brought with them the patient endurance that comes from working the land, the understanding that great projects require sustained effort across seasons and years. But farming had not prepared them for the brutality of construction work in the mountainous borderlands, where winter temperatures could freeze human flesh in minutes and summer heat could kill through dehydration before noon. The soldiers came next, veterans of the unification wars who had expected to return to their home villages as honored heroes. Instead, they found themselves assigned to construction crews where their military discipline made them valuable as foremen and supervisors. They understood logistics, organization, the complex coordination required to move materials across difficult terrain. But they also understood something else that the peasants had not yet learned. They knew what it meant to die far from home for causes larger than their own lives. The prisoners came last, political dissidents and captured rebels and criminals whose offenses ranged from treason to theft to the simple misfortune of being in the wrong place when quota requirements needed to be met. They worked in chains when the terrain permitted, unshackled when the risk of escape was minimized by isolation and distance from any possible refuge. They had nothing to lose except the last stubborn ember of hope that somehow, against all evidence, they might survive to see their families again. But the strangest workers were the volunteers, not many, but enough to puzzle the supervisors and disturb the other conscripts. These were men who had heard something in the imperial proclamations about the wall's purpose that resonated with their deepest beliefs about cosmic necessity. They came from Taoist monasteries and shamanic traditions, from families that had maintained ancient bloodlines connected to the earliest wall-building dynasties. They worked with a fervor that had nothing to do with imperial loyalty and everything to do with their conviction that they were participating in something of supernatural significance. These volunteers spoke of dreams that had called them to the construction sites. Dreams in which they saw the wall not as a barrier against barbarian invasion, but as a protective seal against forces that existed beyond the normal boundaries of human perception. They described visions of the wall as a massive acupuncture needle inserted into the Earth's energy system, a tool for regulating cosmic forces that could destroy civilizations if left unchecked. And they spoke of honor, not the honor that comes from serving an emperor, but the honor that comes from offering one's life to ensure that future generations would inherit a world protected from threats they would never need to know about. The working conditions defied human endurance. Construction crews worked from sunrise to sunset, hauling stones that weighed hundreds of pounds across terrain that would challenge modern mountain climbers. They mixed mortar with their bare hands in freezing temperatures that split skin and left fingers permanently numb. They lifted building materials using rope and wooden pulleys that broke regularly, crushing workers beneath loads of stone and timber. Medical care was non-existent. Injured workers who could not continue working were left to die where they fell, their bodies incorporated into the wall's foundation as expedient fill material. This practice was not born of callousness. It was born of practical necessity. The construction sites were hundreds of miles from the nearest settlements, supplied by caravans that could barely manage to bring enough food and tools for the living workers, let alone evacuate the wounded. But the folklore that grew up around these deaths suggests that something more than expedience was involved. Local shamans claimed that the spirits of workers who died during construction became permanent guardians of the wall, their consciousness merging with the stones they had died building. They spoke of hearing voices in the wind that passed through the wall's crevices, voices speaking in the dialects of provinces scattered across the empire, voices offering protection to travelers and warnings to those who approached the wall with hostile intentions. The winter months were the killing season, when snow blocked the mountain passes and supply caravans could no longer reach the construction sites. Workers survived on stored grain and whatever wildlife they could hunt in the barren landscape. Many crews resorted to cannibalism, feeding on the bodies of those who had already died from cold or starvation. These practices were not reported in official documents, but they were remembered in the oral traditions of the few survivors who eventually made their way back to populated areas. Spring brought its own horrors. When the snow melted, it revealed the extent of winter mortality. Construction sites littered with hundreds of bodies that had been preserved by freezing temperatures. These corpses could not be transported for proper burial, so they were cremated in massive bonfires that burned for weeks, sending smoke signals across the landscape that could be seen from distances of more than 100 miles. But the strangest aspect of the mass deaths was their effect on the wall itself. Sections built with stones that had been quarried near cremation sites displayed unusual properties that puzzled construction supervisors. The mortar in these sections seemed to cure faster and hold more firmly than normal. The stones themselves appeared to resonate with subtle vibrations that could be felt by anyone who placed their hands on the wall's surface. Some workers reported that these sections of wall felt warm to the touch even during winter months, as if they retained the body heat of those who had died building them. Others claimed they could hear heartbeats deep within the stone, rhythmic pulsing that matched the pace of human circulation. A few swore they had seen faces looking back at them from the patterns in the stonework, familiar faces of crew members who had died weeks or months earlier. The supervisors dismissed these reports as hallucinations brought on by exhaustion and malnutrition, but they kept detailed records of which sections displayed these anomalous properties, creating maps that would be referenced by later dynasties when decisions needed to be made about which parts of the wall required the most careful maintenance and protection. By the time construction was completed, the death toll had reached numbers that approached the total population of some smaller kingdoms. Conservative estimates suggest that one worker died for every 100 feet of wall that was built. More liberal calculations place the mortality rate even higher, suggesting that the final structure required the sacrifice of nearly as many human lives as there were stones in its foundation. But the Million Nameless who died building the Great Wall achieved something that they could never have imagined during their lifetimes. Their sacrifice imbued the structure with a spiritual resonance that transformed it from a mere military fortification into something approaching a living entity. Their collective consciousness, according to the shamanic traditions that have preserved their memory, became part of the wall's essential nature. And that consciousness, as we shall discover, continues to influence everyone who encounters the Great Wall today. The Million Nameless are not gone. They have become the wall itself, speaking through stone and mortar to anyone willing to listen with more than merely human ears. Their voices echo still, carrying messages across centuries of silence, whispering secrets that only the dead are permitted to know. Deep within the sections of the Great Wall that tourists never see, in watchtowers that have been sealed for centuries, and passageways that appear on no official maps, archaeologists have discovered something that challenges our understanding of both the wall's construction and the capabilities of ancient Chinese civilization. They have found writing that should not exist. Not the familiar characters of classical Chinese script, not the pictographs that evolved into modern ideograms, not even the earliest forms of written communication that scholars recognize as the ancestors of contemporary language systems. These are symbols that follow no known linguistic patterns, characters that seem to shift meaning depending on the angle of observation, inscriptions that appear to have been carved not with conventional tools, but with methods that left no tool marks on the surrounding stone. Dr. Lin Wei, a linguistic archaeologist from Beijing University, first encountered these anomalous inscriptions during a routine documentation project in a previously unexplored section of wall near the Gobi Desert. Her initial reaction was professional skepticism. Unusual markings in ancient structures are common enough, and most prove to be either decorative elements or the idle scratching of bored workers. But these symbols displayed characteristics that made conventional explanation impossible. The symbols appeared to be three-dimensional, carved not just into the surface of the stone, but through its entire depth. When Dr. Lin's team used ultrasound imaging to examine the internal structure of the marked stones, they discovered that the characters extended completely through blocks that were more than 3 feet thick. The symbols maintained their precise proportions and clarity throughout the entire depth of the stone, suggesting carving techniques that would be difficult to achieve even with modern laser technology. More puzzling still was the discovery that these symbols appeared to have been inscribed before the stones were placed in the wall. Analysis of the mortar around the marked blocks showed that the inscriptions had been carved when the stones were individual quarried pieces, not after they had been incorporated into the wall's structure. This meant that whoever created these symbols had planned their placement with extraordinary precision, knowing exactly where each marked stone would be positioned in the final construction. But the most disturbing aspect of Dr. Lin's discovery was the apparent age of the inscriptions. Carbon dating of organic materials found in the carving grooves suggested that the symbols had been created hundreds of years before the Great Wall's construction began. The markings appeared to predate not just the Qin dynasty unification, but the entire period of Chinese civilization that led to the wall's creation. Someone or something had carved these symbols into stones that would later be incorporated into the Great Wall, and had done so long before anyone conceived of building such a structure. The implications were staggering. Either the builders of the Great Wall had somehow used pre-marked stones that had been prepared by an earlier civilization, or the symbols had been carved by people who possessed knowledge of the wall's future construction. Dr. Lin's team expanded their investigation, using ground-penetrating radar to locate other sections of wall that might contain similar inscriptions. Their survey revealed that marked stones occurred in regular intervals along the wall's entire length, spaced approximately every 700 meters, with mathematical precision that suggested deliberate planning rather than random occurrence. The pattern of placement became even more intriguing when the team consulted astronomical charts. The marked stones appeared to align with specific celestial events: solar eclipses, planetary conjunctions, the rising of particular star systems. It was as if the entire Great Wall had been designed as a massive astronomical instrument, with the inscribed stones serving as reference points for observations that spanned centuries of celestial cycles. Translation attempts have yielded fragments of meaning that raise more questions than they answer. Some symbols appear to represent mathematical concepts that were supposedly unknown to ancient Chinese mathematicians. Formulations that seem related. Other symbols suggest a writing system based on concepts rather than sounds, where individual characters can represent entire philosophical concepts or scientific principles. Dr. Lin describes these as thought hieroglyphs, symbols that communicate directly with the subconscious mind rather than requiring conscious translation through conventional language processing. The most significant breakthrough came when Dr. Lin's colleague, Chen Hui, discovered that the symbols produced different meanings when viewed under different lighting conditions. Characters that appeared to describe construction techniques when examined in daylight revealed astronomical information when illuminated by artificial light sources that matched the spectrum of ancient torch flames. The symbols seemed to have been designed as multi-dimensional information storage devices, capable of communicating different layers of meaning to observers using different methods of illumination. This discovery led to experiments with various types of light sources, including LED arrays calibrated to match the electromagnetic frequencies of starlight from specific constellations. Under these specialized lighting conditions, the symbols revealed what appeared to be technical specifications for construction projects that extended far beyond the Great Wall itself. The inscriptions described underground chambers, tunnel systems that connected distant sections of the wall, and architectural elements that had never been discovered by conventional archaeological investigation. Following these newly translated instructions, Dr. Chen's team began excavating beneath several of the marked stones. Their work revealed hidden chambers that contained artifacts unlike anything found elsewhere in Chinese archaeological sites. These chambers held metallic objects that showed no signs of corrosion despite their apparent age. Crystalline structures that emitted faint light when touched by human skin, and what appeared to be mechanical devices built according to engineering principles that modern science has not yet fully understood. The metal objects proved to be particularly puzzling. Spectrographic analysis revealed alloy compositions that included elements that were supposedly unknown to ancient metallurgists, combined in proportions that created materials with properties that conventional physics cannot adequately explain. Some of these artifacts appeared to be tools, though their intended use remained mysterious. Others seemed decorative, but they incorporated geometric patterns that produced optical illusions and seemed to affect the visual perception of anyone who stared at them for extended periods. The crystalline objects presented their own enigmas. They appeared to be artificial, created through some kind of manufacturing process rather than natural geological formation. When exposed to human body heat, they emitted light in frequencies that corresponded to the visible spectrum, but also included wavelengths that extended into ranges typically associated with radio astronomy. Some researchers suggested that these crystals might be communication devices designed to interact with electromagnetic phenomena in ways that ancient technology was supposedly incapable of achieving. But the mechanical devices found in the hidden chambers defied all attempts at conventional explanation. They appeared to be constructed according to principles that anticipated discoveries in quantum mechanics, incorporating design elements that suggested knowledge of subatomic particle behavior. The devices showed no obvious means of activation, no recognizable interfaces or control mechanisms, but they responded to human proximity by producing subtle vibrations that seemed to resonate with the electromagnetic field generated by the human nervous system. Dr. Lin's team has spent more than 5 years attempting to understand the significance of their discoveries, but their research has raised fundamental questions about the nature of the Great Wall itself. The inscribed stones and hidden chambers suggest that the wall was designed to serve functions that extend far beyond military defense. The structure appears to incorporate technologies and knowledge systems that conventional history claims were unavailable to ancient Chinese civilization. And most disturbing of all, the symbols continue to reveal new meanings as research techniques become more sophisticated. Each technological advance in archaeological methodology unveils additional layers of information hidden within the inscriptions, suggesting that whoever created them possessed knowledge not just of their own era, but of technological developments that would not occur until thousands of years in the future. The Great Wall, according to this emerging evidence, may not be simply an ancient construction project. It may be a message carved in stone and metal and crystal, a communication from a civilization that understood the long-term trajectory of human development and embedded instructions for discoveries that humanity would need to make in its distant future. The stones remember what we have forgotten, and they are waiting patiently for us to develop the wisdom necessary to understand what they have been trying to tell us for more than 2,000 years. During routine geological surveying of northern China, imaging specialists at the Chinese National Space Administration detected discrepancies in their satellite photographs of the Great Wall. The discrepancies were subtle, variations of a few meters in the wall's position when comparing images taken during different orbital passes. Initially, these variations were attributed to atmospheric distortion, photographic parallax, or calibration errors in the satellite equipment. But the discrepancies persisted across multiple imaging systems, multiple satellites, and multiple years of observation. The variations followed patterns that seemed too consistent to be random measurement errors. Certain sections of the wall appeared to shift position in regular cycles, moving a few meters east or west over periods of several months, then returning to their original positions with clockwork precision. Dr. Zhang Mei, a geospatial analyst who has spent the last 3 decades studying these satellite anomalies, describes the phenomenon as architectural respiration, as if the Great Wall were breathing, expanding and contracting along its length in response to forces that conventional geology cannot explain. The movement is subtle enough that ground-based observation cannot detect it, but satellite imagery with meter-level resolution reveals unmistakable evidence of positional changes that occur across the wall's entire length. The discovery of these movements led to more intensive study of the Great Wall's relationship to the underlying geological structure of northern China. What researchers found challenged fundamental assumptions about how ancient builders selected the wall's route and how they achieved the extraordinary geographical precision that has puzzled archaeologists for generations. The Great Wall does not simply follow the natural contours of the landscape, as conventional wisdom suggests. Instead, it appears to trace lines of geological significance that extend deep into the Earth's crust. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have revealed that the wall sits directly above a network of natural caverns and underground chambers that extend for hundreds of miles beneath northern China. These subterranean spaces follow the same serpentine path as the wall itself, suggesting that the ancient builders possessed knowledge of geological formations that should have been impossible to detect with ancient technology. More intriguingly, seismographic monitoring has detected subtle vibrations that travel along the wall's length at regular intervals. These vibrations do not correspond to earthquake activity or other known geological phenomena. Instead, they appear to be generated by the wall itself, as if the structure were somehow alive and producing its own internal rhythms. Dr. Lu Feng, a specialist in architectural acoustics, has studied these vibrations using ultra-sensitive recording equipment placed at strategic points along the wall's length. His research has revealed that the Great Wall functions as a massive, resonating chamber, generating complex harmonic frequencies that interact with both the Earth's magnetic field and the electromagnetic radiation from solar activity. The frequencies generated by the wall fall primarily within ranges that affect human consciousness in ways that modern neuroscience is only beginning to understand. Prolonged exposure to these particular sound frequencies appears to alter brainwave patterns, inducing states of consciousness that research subjects describe as meditative, transcendent, or mystical. Some subjects report experiencing what they describe as expanded awareness, a sense of connection to environmental and cosmic forces that normally remain below the threshold of conscious perception. These discoveries have led to speculation about the wall's original purpose that extends far beyond military defense. The structure may have been designed as a massive consciousness-altering device, a tool for inducing specific psychological states in people who spent extended periods in its vicinity. The ancient builders may have understood something about the relationship between architectural acoustics and human consciousness that modern science is only now beginning to rediscover. But the most dramatic evidence for the wall's anomalous properties comes from observations of its behavior during solar storms and other periods of intense electromagnetic activity. During these events, satellite imagery shows that the wall's positional variations become more pronounced, sometimes shifting several meters from its baseline position within the span of a few hours. The movement appears to be coordinated along the entire length of the structure, as if the wall were responding as a single organism to electromagnetic stimulation from space. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station have reported visual phenomena associated with the Great Wall during periods of high solar activity. They describe seeing aurora-like light emissions that appear to originate from the wall itself, glowing streamers of colored light that extend vertically from the structure toward the upper atmosphere. These emissions are not visible from ground level and do not appear in conventional satellite imagery, but they are consistently observed by human eyes under specific atmospheric conditions. The Chinese government has classified much of the research into these phenomena, but leaked documents suggest that the wall's electromagnetic properties have practical applications that extend beyond scientific curiosity. Some sources indicate that the wall may function as a natural early warning system for solar storms and other space weather events that can disrupt modern communications and power grid systems. The timing of the wall's movements appears to correlate with changes in the Earth's magnetic field that occur hours or even days before solar storms reach Earth's atmosphere. This suggests that the ancient builders may have created a structure capable of detecting and responding to cosmic events that modern technology can only identify using sophisticated satellite monitoring systems. Local folklore has preserved stories about the wall's unusual behavior that extend back centuries before modern scientific observation began. Village elders in communities near the wall describe seasonal rituals that their ancestors performed to calm the dragon during periods when the wall became restless. These rituals involved specific combinations of music, burning incense, and ceremonial offerings placed at particular points along the wall's length. The villagers describe the wall as a living entity that requires care and attention to function properly. They speak of signs that indicate when the wall is healthy, the appearance of certain types of wildlife, the growth patterns of vegetation near the structure, the clarity of water in wells that tap into underground streams beneath the wall. They also describe symptoms that suggest when the wall is becoming unstable, unexplained sounds, changes in local weather patterns, the behavior of animals that normally live near the structure. Modern research has confirmed several aspects of these traditional observations. Wildlife populations near the Great Wall do show seasonal variations that correlate with the structure's electromagnetic activity. Local weather patterns do seem influenced by the wall's presence in ways that cannot be explained by simple topographical effects. And sensitive electromagnetic monitoring equipment does detect changes in the wall's energy emissions that precede various natural phenomena by predictable intervals. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond archaeology or historical curiosity. If the Great Wall was indeed designed as a massive geophysical instrument, capable of detecting and responding to cosmic forces that affect Earth's environment, then its builders possessed scientific knowledge that far exceeded what conventional history attributes to ancient Chinese civilization. The wall that walks may not be moving randomly through the landscape. It may be performing a dance choreographed by forces that operate on astronomical timescales, following rhythms that connect Earth's geological processes to the larger patterns of cosmic activity that influence our planet's development. And if this is true, then the Great Wall represents something unprecedented in human history, a construction project that transcends the normal boundaries between architecture and technology, between human engineering and natural phenomena, between the built environment and the living cosmos itself. The dragon that traced the wall's path through ancient dreams may not have been mythological after all. It may have been a metaphor for something far more real and far more significant than we have yet learned to recognize. A force that guides the evolution of consciousness through the construction of instruments that connect human awareness to the cosmic processes that govern the development of life and intelligence throughout the universe. The wall walks, the dragon breathes, and somewhere in the space between ancient wisdom and modern science, a truth waits to be discovered that could transform our understanding of what it means to be human on a planet that dances through space according to laws that we have barely begun to comprehend. They stand like silent sentinels against the gathering dusk, these watchtowers that crown the Great Wall's serpentine length. From a distance, they appear to be simple stone structures, functional military architecture designed for observation and defense. But approach them in the hour when daylight surrenders to darkness, when mist begins to rise from the valleys below, and you will discover that they hold secrets that conventional military history cannot explain. The watchtowers of the Great Wall number in the thousands, spaced at irregular intervals that follow no obvious strategic pattern. Some stand within sight of each other, close enough that guards could communicate through hand signals or mirror flashes. Others are separated by many miles of empty wall, positioned in locations where their defensive value seems questionable at best. Yet, archaeological evidence suggests that every tower was placed with deliberate precision, according to criteria that extended far beyond simple military necessity. Commander Li Zhou, who served as a garrison officer during the Ming dynasty's restoration of the Great Wall, left behind personal journals that provide disturbing insights into the daily reality of manning these remote outposts. His writings describe duties that had little to do with watching for barbarian raiders and everything to do with maintaining vigilance against phenomena that defied rational explanation. According to Li's journals, the primary responsibility of watchtower guards was not military surveillance, but what he termed threshold maintenance, ensuring that certain boundaries remained properly sealed against intrusions from realms that existed adjacent to, but separate from, normal reality. The guards were required to perform specific rituals at sunset and sunrise, lighting particular types of incense and reciting formulas that had been passed down through generations of garrison commanders. These rituals were not optional religious observances, but essential operational procedures. Li's journals describe incidents when guards failed to perform the prescribed ceremonies correctly, resulting in what he euphemistically calls atmospheric disturbances. These disturbances manifested as unexplained sounds, visual phenomena that could not be attributed to natural causes, and psychological effects that sometimes drove guards to abandon their posts in terror. The most experienced guards, according to Li's account, learned to recognize signs that indicated when the boundaries they protected were becoming unstable. They watched for specific types of cloud formations that appeared only near certain towers, listened for changes in the quality of wind sounds that passed through the wall's stone passages, and monitored the behavior of wildlife that normally inhabited the areas around their posts. When these signs appeared, the guards would implement emergency protocols that Li describes in coded language that suggests knowledge too dangerous to record in plain text. These protocols involved the use of special signal fires that burned materials other than wood, the sounding of bells tuned to frequencies that produced effects beyond simple communication, and the deployment of what Li calls threshold anchors, objects that he never describes directly but that seem to have been essential for maintaining the stability of whatever boundaries the towers were designed to protect. The signal system used by the watchtowers was far more sophisticated than the simple beacon fires that conventional military historians describe. Li's journals reference a complex communication network that used combinations of light, sound, and what he terms resonance signatures to transmit information across the wall's entire length within a matter of hours. This system allegedly allowed garrison commanders to coordinate responses to threats that conventional military doctrine did not acknowledge as existing. But the most disturbing aspects of Li's account concern the psychological toll of extended service in the watchtowers. Guards who served for more than 2 years began to display symptoms that modern psychology might classify as severe dissociative disorders. They reported experiencing memories that belonged to previous garrison members who had died decades earlier. They described having conversations with fellow guards who investigation revealed had never been assigned to their towers. Some guards claimed to perceive multiple versions of reality simultaneously, seeing their watchtowers as they existed in the present while also observing the same locations during previous historical periods. They would report activities and events that had occurred during earlier dynasties, providing details about historical incidents that they could not possibly have learned through conventional means. Li's journals suggest that these psychological phenomena were not pathological, but rather occupational hazards that came with prolonged exposure to whatever forces the watchtowers were designed to monitor and contain. The most senior guards rather than being considered mentally unstable, were valued for their ability to perceive threats that existed in dimensions that normal human consciousness could not access. The training program for Watchtower guards involved much more than military discipline and defensive tactics. New recruits underwent months of preparation that Lee describes as consciousness conditioning, a process designed to expand their perceptual abilities beyond normal human limitations while maintaining enough psychological stability to function effectively as guards. This training included meditation techniques that were supposedly derived from ancient Taoist practices, dietary regimens that incorporated substances known to affect brain chemistry, and exposure to sound frequencies that gradually altered the guards' neurological responses to environmental stimuli. The goal was to create soldiers who could perceive and respond to threats that existed partially outside the normal boundaries of physical reality. The watchtowers themselves were constructed according to principles that modern architecture does not recognize. Each tower incorporated geometric proportions that created acoustic effects designed to amplify human consciousness rather than simply human voices. The internal chambers were shaped to produce standing wave patterns that interacted with the electromagnetic fields generated by human brain activity, creating resonance effects that enhance the guard's ability to perceive subtle environmental changes. Archaeological investigation of abandoned watchtowers has revealed internal structures that serve no obvious military purpose. Hidden chambers contain what appear to be acoustic focusing devices, curved stone surfaces that concentrate and direct sound waves in ways that suggest knowledge of advanced psychoacoustic principles. Other chambers contain arrangements of metallic objects that create electromagnetic field patterns similar to those produced by modern consciousness research equipment. The most significant discovery came during renovation work on a watchtower near Beijing, when workers found a sealed chamber that contained what appeared to be operational manuals for consciousness expansion techniques. These manuals, written in classical Chinese but incorporating terminology that has no equivalent in conventional literature, describe procedures for training human awareness to perceive multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The manuals explain that the watchtowers were designed as interfaces between different levels of reality, and that the guards served as biological sensors capable of detecting disturbances that threatened the stability of these interfaces. The documents describe a cosmological model in which physical reality exists as one layer in a complex multi-dimensional structure, and suggest that the Great Wall functions as a stabilizing element that prevents catastrophic interactions between these different dimensional layers. Modern research into consciousness and quantum mechanics has begun to provide theoretical frameworks that make some sense of these ancient documents. The concept of multiple dimensional states existing simultaneously in the same physical space is consistent with current theories about parallel universes and quantum superposition. The idea that human consciousness might be capable of perceiving these multiple states simultaneously aligns with research into the relationship between consciousness and quantum mechanical phenomena. But the most intriguing aspect of the Watchtower manuals is their claim that the guards were not simply observing these multi-dimensional phenomena, but actively participating in maintaining the boundaries between different reality states. The documents describe the guards as essential components in a cosmic maintenance system, biological elements in a vast machine designed to ensure the continued stability of physical reality itself. The watchtowers stand empty now, their ancient purposes forgotten by modern military historians who interpret them as simple defensive installations. But the mist still rises from the valleys at dusk, and sensitive individuals who visit these remote structures report experiences that echo the phenomena described in Commander Lee's forbidden journals. Some visitors describe hearing voices that seem to come from within the stone walls themselves, voices speaking in dialects that predate modern Chinese, voices that seem to be maintaining conversations that have continued uninterrupted for centuries. Others report visual phenomena, glimpses of figures in ancient military dress who appear for moments before dissolving back into shadow and stone. The watchers in the mist are gone, but their vigilance continues. The boundaries they protected still require maintenance. The thresholds they guarded still need watchful care. And somewhere in the space between ancient duty and cosmic necessity, their consciousness persists, woven into the very stones they spent their lives defending against forces that exist beyond the edges of human understanding. The towers wait, the mist rises, and the eternal watch continues, maintained now not by living guards, but by awareness that has transcended the normal boundaries between life and death, between human consciousness and the vast cosmic intelligence that guides the evolution of reality itself through the careful maintenance of boundaries that must never be allowed to fail. In the archives of the Beijing Archaeological Institute, there exists a file marked with classifications that predate the modern Chinese government. The file contains maps, photographs, and research notes documenting one of the most puzzling discoveries in the history of Great Wall archaeology: the existence of sealed gates and passages that have never been opened, not because they are locked or blocked, but because opening them appears to be physically impossible. These gates exist throughout the length of the Great Wall, but they are not marked on any tourist maps or included in any official historical surveys. They appear as ordinary sections of wall when viewed from a distance, but close inspection reveals the faint outlines of massive doorways that have been sealed with stones fitted so precisely that no mortar was required. The joints between these sealing stones are so tight that not even air can pass through them, yet the stones show no signs of having been cut or shaped with conventional tools. Dr. Wang Shu, the lead archaeologist who first catalogued these mysterious gates in the 1960s, spent more than 20 years attempting to understand their purpose and discover methods for opening them. His research notes describe attempts using everything from conventional excavation tools to modern hydraulic equipment, but the sealing stones proved impervious to all efforts at removal. The stones appear to be fused together at the molecular level, creating barriers that are essentially single pieces of solid rock shaped like assemblages of individual blocks. X-ray analysis reveals internal structures that suggest the gates were sealed using techniques that modern materials science cannot duplicate. Techniques that somehow transformed separate stones into unified crystalline structures without the application of heat or pressure sufficient to leave detectable traces. But the most disturbing aspect of Dr. Wang's research was the discovery that these sealed gates appear on construction drawings that predate their creation by hundreds of years. Architectural plans from the early Ming dynasty clearly show the locations of gates that would not be sealed until the late Ming period, suggesting that the builders planned from the beginning to create passages that would eventually be made permanently inaccessible. The gates are not randomly distributed along the wall's length. They appear at specific intervals that correspond to astronomical alignments, positioned at points where the wall intersects with underground watercourses and located at sites where geological surveys have detected unusual magnetic field variations. The pattern of their placement suggests that they were designed to serve functions that had nothing to do with normal military traffic through the wall. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have revealed that each sealed gate leads to underground chambers that extend far deeper into the earth than conventional archaeological excavation has been able to penetrate. These chambers appear to be connected by tunnel systems that follow the same serpentine path as the wall itself, creating a mirror image of the above-ground structure that exists entirely below the surface. The most extensive investigation of these underground systems was conducted in the 1980s by a joint team of Chinese and international researchers using sophisticated mining equipment borrowed from the coal industry. Their work confirmed the existence of vast subterranean complexes that extend for miles beneath the Great Wall, but they also encountered phenomena that forced them to abandon their research before reaching the deepest levels of the underground system. Team members reported equipment malfunctions that occurred only in specific areas of the tunnel system, areas where electromagnetic instruments detected field variations that exceeded the capacity of their measuring devices. They described atmospheric conditions that seemed to change without correlation to surface weather patterns, including temperature variations that created zones of extreme cold surrounded by areas of unusual warmth. Most disturbing were the acoustic phenomena that team members experienced in the deepest accessible areas of the underground complex. They reported hearing sounds that seemed to come from even deeper levels, sounds that resembled massive mechanical operations, as if enormous machinery were operating far below their current depth. These sounds followed regular patterns that suggested coordinated activity rather than random geological processes. The research team also discovered that the underground chambers contained air that had apparently been trapped for centuries without becoming stale or depleted of oxygen. Chemical analysis revealed atmospheric compositions that differed from surface air in ways that could not be explained by normal geological processes. The underground atmosphere contained trace gases that should not exist in nature and isotopic ratios that suggested interaction with radioactive materials that do not occur naturally on Earth. Perhaps most puzzling of all was the discovery that the sealed gates appear to respond to human presence in ways that suggest some form of dormant intelligence. Motion sensors placed near the gates detected subtle vibrations that occurred only when people approached within a specific distance. These vibrations followed patterns that resembled communication attempts, rhythmic sequences that seemed designed to attract attention and convey meaning. Dr. Wang's team conducted experiments in which they attempted to respond to these vibration patterns using similar rhythmic sequences. During these communication attempts, the gates exhibited behaviors that conventional physics cannot explain. The sealed stones appeared to become slightly translucent, allowing observers to glimpse the chambers that lay beyond the barriers. Some team members reported seeing movement in these briefly visible spaces, shadows that suggested the presence of entities or objects that moved according to patterns too organized to be random. Local folklore preserves stories about these sealed gates that extend back to the earliest periods of the wall's construction. Village shamans describe them as prison doors that contain forces too dangerous to be released into the normal world. They speak of ancient ceremonies that were performed to ensure that these doors would remain permanently sealed, and they maintain traditional warnings about the consequences of attempting to open them. According to these oral traditions, the sealed gates were created to contain entities that had been captured during the wall's construction, beings that existed partially outside normal reality and that posed threats to human civilization that extended far beyond physical danger. The shamans described these entities as chaos spirits that fed on the disruption of natural order and that grew stronger during periods of war, famine, and social upheaval. The sealing ceremonies supposedly required the sacrifice of volunteers who understood that their life force would be used to power the barriers that kept these entities contained. These volunteers, according to the legends, did not simply die during the sealing process, but became permanent guardians whose consciousness was embedded in the gate structures themselves, creating living barriers that would maintain their effectiveness as long as the volunteers' spirits remained willing to continue their protective function. Modern attempts to verify these folklore accounts have produced results that cannot be dismissed as mere superstition. Electromagnetic monitoring equipment placed near the sealed gates detects patterns of activity that correspond to human brainwave frequencies, as if conscious minds were somehow active within the stone barriers themselves. These patterns become more pronounced during periods of local, social, or political tension, suggesting that whatever intelligence exists within the gates responds to environmental conditions in ways that support the shamanic accounts of their protective function. The Chinese government has classified all research into the sealed gates as matters of national security, forbidding foreign archaeologists from investigating them and restricting access even to domestic researchers. Official statements describe the sites as structurally unstable areas that pose safety hazards to visitors, but leaked documents suggest that the classification is motivated by concerns that have nothing to do with conventional archaeological or safety considerations. Some sources indicate that the government maintains permanent monitoring stations near several of the sealed gates, using equipment that detects phenomena that conventional scientific instruments are not designed to measure. These monitoring stations allegedly track changes in the gate's behavior that correlate with various natural and social phenomena, from earthquake prediction to economic forecasting. The sealed gates of the Great Wall represent one of archaeology's most profound mysteries, structures that appear to have been designed not to facilitate human activity, but to prevent something else from engaging in activities that would threaten human welfare. They stand as permanent reminders that the Great Wall's builders understood forces and phenomena that modern science has not yet learned to recognize, let alone control. The gates remain sealed, their secrets locked behind barriers that have resisted every attempt at penetration. But the questions they raise continue to challenge our understanding of what the Great Wall was truly designed to accomplish. Were the ancient builders simply creating military fortifications, or were they constructing something far more significant? A cosmic prison designed to contain forces that exist beyond the normal boundaries of physical reality. The answers lie behind barriers that may have been designed to remain impenetrable until humanity develops the wisdom necessary to safely confront whatever truths they protect. The gates that never open may be waiting for the right moment, the right consciousness, the right level of understanding to finally reveal the deepest secrets of the Great Wall's true purpose. Until then, they stand as eternal guardians, protecting not the living from the dead, but reality itself from forces that exist in the spaces between worlds. Rise above the Great Wall higher than eagles soar, higher than the mountain peaks that pierce the morning clouds, until the curve of the earth becomes visible and the wall itself transforms from a massive construction project into something resembling a vast brushstroke painted across the landscape of northern China. From this celestial perspective, the true nature of the Great Wall becomes apparent. It is not a straight line or even a simple curve, but a complex undulation that follows patterns found nowhere else in human architecture. The wall moves across the landscape like a sleeping serpent, its body curving and turning in rhythms that mirror the movement of water, the flow of wind, the spiraling dance of galaxies across the cosmic void. Satellite imagery reveals what ground-based observation cannot. The Great Wall's path corresponds with extraordinary precision to the shape of the constellation Draco, the celestial dragon that winds around the north celestial pole. When the Wall's terrestrial coordinates are plotted against Draco's star positions, accounting for the precession of the equinoxes over the centuries since the Wall's construction, the correlation is too exact to be coincidental. The ancient builders somehow encoded a star map into the physical structure of their greatest construction project, creating a terrestrial mirror of celestial patterns that connects Earth's landscape to the eternal movements of stars and planets. But this astronomical alignment represents only the beginning of the Wall's relationship to cosmic forces that operate on scales far beyond human comprehension. Dr. Chen Dao, an astrophysicist who has spent decades studying the Wall's astronomical properties, has discovered that its undulating path traces energy patterns that extend deep into the Earth's crust and far out into the solar system. The Wall appears to follow lines of magnetic force that connect our planet's internal structure to the electromagnetic fields generated by solar activity and the gravitational influences of other celestial bodies. These connections are not merely theoretical. Scientific monitoring has revealed that the Great Wall's behavior changes in response to astronomical events in ways that suggest it functions as a massive antenna designed to receive and process cosmic information. During solar flares, the Wall generates electromagnetic emissions that can be detected by sensitive instruments. During planetary alignments, it exhibits structural variations that correlate with changes in Earth's magnetic field. The Wall appears to be most active during celestial events that occur in the constellation Draco, when specific stars in this constellation reach particular positions relative to Earth's rotation. Monitoring equipment detects increased activity along the Wall's entire length. These periods of heightened activity coincide with historical records of unusual phenomena observed by the Wall's guards. Periods when the structure seemed to come alive with its own internal energy. But the most remarkable discovery about the Wall's cosmic connections came through analysis of its internal structure using technology borrowed from seismology and medical imaging. The Wall contains networks of hollow spaces, not random cavities created by imperfect construction, but precisely engineered chambers that form geometric patterns throughout the structure's entire length. These internal chambers function as resonating cavities that amplify and focus specific frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. The frequencies they emphasize correspond to wavelengths associated with deep space radio sources, pulsars, quasars, and other cosmic phenomena that emit regular signals across vast distances. The Wall appears to be designed as a massive radio telescope, but one that operates according to principles that modern radio astronomy has not yet fully understood. The geometric patterns formed by the internal chamber networks match mathematical relationships found in nature's most fundamental structures. The same proportions that govern the spiral of DNA molecules, the arrangement of seeds in sunflower heads, and the formation of galaxy clusters appear in the Wall's internal architecture. This suggests that the builders understood mathematical principles that connect the smallest scales of molecular organization to the largest scales of cosmic structure. Dr. Chen's research team has used computer modeling to simulate the Wall's electromagnetic behavior during various astronomical conditions. Their models suggest that the Wall functions as a massive consciousness interface, a structure designed to translate cosmic information into forms that human awareness can process and understand. The Wall may have been built not just to defend against physical invasion, but to facilitate communication with intelligence that exists on cosmic scales far beyond human comprehension. This interpretation gains support from analysis of historical records describing the psychological effects experienced by people who spent extended periods near the Great Wall. Throughout its history, individuals who lived and worked along the wall reported experiences that modern psychology would classify as expanded states of consciousness. Experiences of profound connection to natural and cosmic forces, episodes of apparent telepathic communication, and visions that provided accurate information about distant events. These experiences were not random hallucinations, but consistent phenomena that occurred most frequently during specific astronomical conditions. People who meditated near the wall during planetary alignments, solar eclipses, and other celestial events reported receiving information that they could not have obtained through conventional means. Knowledge about weather patterns, geological changes, and even political developments in distant regions. The wall appears to have served as a consciousness amplification device, enhancing human awareness to levels that allowed direct perception of information, flows that normally remain below the threshold of conscious detection. The ancient builders may have understood something about the relationship between human consciousness and cosmic intelligence that modern science is only beginning to investigate. Recent research in quantum physics has provided theoretical frameworks that make the wall's consciousness-enhancing properties less mysterious. Quantum entanglement theory suggests that information can be transmitted instantaneously across vast distances through connections that operate outside the normal constraints of space and time. The Great Wall may have been designed to tap into these quantum information networks, serving as a massive quantum antenna that connected human consciousness to cosmic intelligence systems. The dragon whose dream became the Great Wall may not have been a mythological creature, but rather a metaphor for cosmic intelligence that transcends individual biological existence. This intelligence may have guided the wall's construction as part of a vast project designed to facilitate the evolution of consciousness throughout the universe. A project that connects civilizations across cosmic distances through the construction of consciousness, amplifying structures. Evidence for this interpretation comes from comparative studies of megalithic structures worldwide. Many ancient monuments, Stonehenge, the pyramids of Egypt, the Nazca lines of Peru, share mathematical and astronomical properties with the Great Wall that suggest common design principles. These structures appear to be components of a global network designed to enhance human consciousness and facilitate communication with cosmic intelligence. The Great Wall may be Earth's largest component in this global consciousness network, its serpentine form designed to channel and focus cosmic energy in ways that gradually expand human awareness toward cosmic scales of understanding. The wall's undulating path may trace the flow of consciousness itself as it moves through various levels of reality, from the molecular to the galactic. 1. If this interpretation is correct, then the Great Wall represents something unprecedented in human history, a construction project that transcends the normal boundaries between architecture and consciousness, between human engineering and cosmic intelligence, between earthly concerns and universal purposes. The wall may be a physical manifestation of cosmic dreams that operate on timescales measured in millennia rather than human lifespans. The dragon's dream continues to unfold along the ancient stones, whispering cosmic secrets to anyone willing to listen with more than human ears. The wall breathes with the rhythm of galactic rotation, pulses with the heartbeat of quasars, and dreams with the vast intelligence that guides the evolution of consciousness throughout the universe. From the celestial perspective that reveals its true nature, the Great Wall appears not as a barrier built by human hands, but as a cosmic instrument played by forces that exist beyond the normal boundaries of space and time. Its music is the sound of consciousness, awakening to its own cosmic nature. Its harmony, the rhythm of intelligence expanding toward understanding that encompasses the entire universe. The dragon dreams, and in its dreams, the wall becomes a bridge between Earth and stars, between human awareness and cosmic consciousness, between the ancient past and the infinite future that awaits consciousness. Brave enough to transcend the boundaries that separate individual minds from the vast intelligence that dreams reality into existence, through the patient construction of beauty, into existence through the patient construction of beauty that connects all things across the immeasurable distances of space and time. This is not mere poetic metaphor, but observable phenomenon that has puzzled researchers, historians, and sensitive visitors for generations. The wall seems to exist simultaneously in multiple temporal states, creating a corridor through history where past, present, and future intersect in ways that conventional understanding of linear time cannot explain. Dr. Li Mei, a temporal archaeologist from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, has documented hundreds of cases where individuals visiting the Great Wall have experienced what she terms temporal displacement episodes, moments when observers perceive the wall as it existed during different historical periods, sometimes witnessing events that occurred centuries or even millennia ago. These episodes are not hallucinations or imaginative reconstructions based on historical knowledge. The experiences consistently include accurate details about clothing, construction techniques, and daily life practices that the observers could not have known through conventional research. Some episodes provide information that contradicts accepted historical accounts, but that later archaeological investigation confirms to be accurate. One of the most extensively documented cases occurred in 1987, when a British tourist named Sarah Chen experienced what appeared to be a several-hour journey through the wall's construction period during the Ming Dynasty. She described in precise detail the tools, materials, and techniques used by workers she observed, providing information that enabled archaeologists to locate and excavate a previously unknown construction site that matched her descriptions exactly. But perhaps more significantly, Sarah also observed construction activities that had not yet occurred in the historical period she was apparently witnessing. She described workers installing structural elements that archaeological evidence shows were not added to that section of wall until several decades after the time period she seemed to be experiencing. Her observations suggested that she was somehow perceiving multiple time periods simultaneously, seeing the wall's construction as it unfolded across decades of work compressed into a single experience. The temporal anomalies associated with the Great Wall are not limited to individual psychological experiences. Photographic evidence has documented visual phenomena that appear to show the wall in different states of construction or decay than its current physical condition. These images are not the result of photographic manipulation or equipment malfunction, but seem to capture moments when the wall briefly exists in temporal states other than the present. Dr. Li's research team has used sophisticated timing equipment to measure temporal variations along different sections of the wall. Their instruments detect fluctuations in the rate at which time passes, with some areas exhibiting slightly accelerated temporal flow, while others show evidence of temporal deceleration. These variations follow patterns that correlate with astronomical events, suggesting that the wall's temporal properties are influenced by cosmic factors that affect the fundamental structure of space-time. The most dramatic temporal anomalies occur during specific celestial alignments that happen approximately every 72 years, when the constellation Draco reaches particular positions relative to Earth's rotation. During these alignments, multiple witnesses have reported experiencing what appears to be time travel, finding themselves observing the wall during various historical periods while remaining physically present in their original time. These temporal experiences are not random, but seem to follow patterns that suggest the wall serves as a kind of temporal archive, preserving echoes of significant historical events within its physical structure. Observers most commonly experience visions of pivotal moments in the wall's history, its original construction, major battles fought along its length, ceremonial events that occurred at specific locations, and moments of crisis when the wall's guardians faced threats that conventional military history does not acknowledge. The wall appears to record not just human events, but also cosmic occurrences that affected Earth's development. Some temporal displacement episodes include observations of astronomical phenomena, meteor impacts, aurora displays, planetary alignments that occurred hundreds or thousands of years ago, but that somehow remain accessible to present-day observers under specific conditions. This temporal recording function may be related to the unusual materials incorporated into the wall's construction. Archaeological analysis has identified stones that contain mineral compositions not found in local geological formations, suggesting that the builders deliberately incorporated materials from distant locations. These exotic stones exhibit properties that current physics cannot fully explain. They appear to store electromagnetic energy in ways that create localized distortions in the space-time continuum. The temporal effects become more pronounced in areas where these unusual stones are concentrated, particularly in sections of wall that were constructed during specific astronomical conditions. Builders appear to have understood that certain combinations of materials and timing could create structures that transcended normal temporal limitations, allowing them to build monuments that would continue to interact with past and future events long after their construction was completed. Dr. Lee's research has revealed that the wall's temporal properties may be intentional features rather than accidental byproducts of its construction. Ancient Chinese texts describe architectural principles based on the concept of eternal construction, building techniques designed to create structures that would exist across multiple time periods simultaneously. These texts suggest that master builders possessed knowledge of temporal mechanics that allowed them to construct buildings that served functions in past, present, and future simultaneously. The Great Wall may have been designed as a temporal stabilization device, a structure intended to prevent catastrophic disruptions to the normal flow of historical events. The wall's presence may serve to anchor specific crucial moments in Earth's development, ensuring that certain evolutionary processes and cultural developments would occur according to patterns necessary for humanity's long-term survival and growth. This interpretation gains support from analysis of the timing of major historical events that occurred near the Great Wall throughout Chinese history. Wars, dynastic changes, technological developments, and cultural transformations seem to follow cyclical patterns that correlate with the wall's temporal fluctuations. The structure may influence the timing of historical events, creating rhythmic patterns that guide civilizational development according to cosmic schedules that operate on timescales far beyond human lifespans. Local folklore preserves stories about the wall's temporal properties that extend back to the earliest periods of its existence. Village shamans describe the wall as a river of time that allows communication between different historical epochs. They speak of ancestors who continue to influence present-day events through their connection to the wall's temporal matrix, and they maintain traditions designed to facilitate this trans-temporal communication. These shamanic traditions include specific rituals performed at particular locations along the wall during certain astronomical conditions. The rituals allegedly allow practitioners to receive guidance from ancestors who lived during previous historical periods, accessing wisdom and knowledge that would otherwise be lost to temporal distance. Modern practitioners of these traditions report experiences that suggest genuine communication with consciousness that exists in different time periods. The wall's temporal properties may also extend into the future, providing glimpses of potential developments that will occur in coming decades or centuries. Some temporal displacement episodes include observations of the wall as it will exist in future conditions, sometimes showing technological enhancements that do not yet exist, sometimes revealing environmental changes that have not yet occurred. These future visions are not fixed prophecies, but appear to show potential timelines that will manifest depending on choices made in the present. The wall may serve as a temporal navigation device, allowing present-day consciousness to explore possible futures and make decisions that will guide historical development toward optimal outcomes. The concept of the Great Wall as a temporal instrument suggests purposes that extend far beyond anything conventional history has imagined. The structure may have been built not just to defend against spatial invasion, but to protect against temporal disruption, threats that exist across time rather than across geography. The wall may serve as a barrier against forces that could alter the past in ways that would prevent the development of human civilization. As we walk along the ancient stones, we are not simply moving through space, but through time itself, following pathways that connect every moment of the wall's existence with every other moment. The echoes we hear in the wind are not merely sounds reflected from distant surfaces, but voices from across the centuries, speaking to us across temporal distances that the wall's architecture has somehow compressed into the eternal present moment. The Great Wall stands as a monument to humanity's relationship with time itself, a structure that transcends the normal boundaries between past, present, and future. It reminds us that history is not a linear sequence of completed events, but a living process in which every moment continues to influence every other moment, connected by invisible threads that the wall's builders understood and incorporated into their greatest creation. Time flows along the wall like water through a carefully designed channel, carrying messages between epochs, connecting consciousness across centuries, and ensuring that the deepest wisdom of human experience remains accessible to those brave enough to step outside the normal constraints of temporal perception and listen to the eternal conversations that continue in the spaces between moments. In the age of satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar, of laser measurement and computer modeling, the Great Wall of China has become more mysterious rather than less. Each technological advance that should demystify the ancient structure instead reveals new puzzles that challenge our understanding of what ancient civilizations were capable of achieving. The contradictions begin with the most basic question: how long is the Great Wall? Modern surveying technology, accurate to within centimeters, has produced measurements that vary by thousands of miles depending on which sections are included and how the complex system of walls, barriers, and fortifications is defined. More troubling still, repeated measurements of the same sections sometimes yield different results, as if the wall's dimensions change over time. Dr. Michael Hartwell, a surveying specialist from the International Institute of Precision Measurement, has spent 15 years attempting to create a definitive map of the Great Wall's complete extent. His work has revealed discrepancies that conventional surveying cannot explain. Sections of wall that appear identical in construction and materials exhibit different measurements when surveyed using identical equipment and methods. Some sections appear to be longer when measured from west to east than when measured from east to west, violating basic principles of Euclidean geometry. These measurement anomalies are not random, but follow patterns that correlate with astronomical events, lunar cycles, and solar activity. During certain celestial conditions, the wall appears to expand or contract slightly, as if it were responding to cosmic forces in ways that affect its physical dimensions. The changes are subtle, usually only a few meters over distances of many miles, but they are consistent and measurable. More dramatic are the discoveries made by archaeologists using modern excavation technology guided by computer analysis of satellite imagery. Teams have repeatedly uncovered sections of wall that do not appear on any historical records, and that exhibit construction techniques that should not have been available to ancient builders. These newly discovered sections contain materials that spectrographic analysis reveals to be alloys of metals that were supposedly unknown to ancient Chinese metallurgy. Carbon dating of organic materials found in the mortar produces results that place construction dates thousands of years before the conventional historical timeline for the Great Wall's beginning. Some sections appear to predate Chinese civilization itself, suggesting that the wall incorporates elements from cultures that existed before recorded history began. The construction techniques observed in these ancient sections challenge fundamental assumptions about the technological capabilities of prehistoric civilizations. The stones are fitted together with precision that rivals modern computer-controlled cutting equipment, joined without mortar, yet sealed so tightly that water cannot penetrate the joints even after millennia of weathering. Analysis of the cutting marks reveals patterns that suggest the use of tools that operated at frequencies beyond the range of conventional mechanical devices. Perhaps most puzzling are the sections that appear to have been constructed using techniques that modern engineering has not yet developed. Some walls incorporate structural elements that should collapse under their own weight, according to conventional understanding of material stress and load distribution. Yet they have remained stable for centuries without requiring any maintenance or reinforcement. Dr. Susan Meyer, a structural engineer who has analyzed these anomalous sections for the International Heritage Foundation, describes them as examples of impossible architecture, structures that violate known principles of physics yet continue to function perfectly. Her computer models cannot explain how these sections remain stable, suggesting that they operate according to engineering principles that current science has not yet discovered. The mystery deepens when modern restoration efforts encounter sections of wall that resist conventional repair techniques. Workers have reported that damaged stones sometimes heal themselves overnight, returning to their original condition without human intervention. Mortar that should require weeks to cure hardens within hours when applied to certain sections of wall, while identical materials applied to adjacent sections follow normal curing schedules. Electronic equipment malfunctions regularly when used near specific areas of the wall, with patterns of failure that suggest interference from energy sources that conventional instruments cannot detect. GPS systems lose accuracy when tracking movement along certain sections, sometimes showing positions that are off by miles despite clear satellite reception. Radio communication devices experience interference that creates patterns resembling coded signals, though no identifiable source for these transmissions has ever been located. The most sophisticated modern technology produces the most dramatic anomalies, Thermal imaging reveals that the wall maintains internal temperatures that vary independently of environmental conditions, with some sections remaining warm during winter months and others staying cool during summer heat. The temperature variations follow geometric patterns that suggest internal heating systems based on principles that modern thermodynamics does not recognize. Electromagnetic surveys reveal that the wall generates its own magnetic field, independent of Earth's natural magnetism. This field fluctuates in patterns that correlate with solar activity and lunar cycles, suggesting that the wall functions as a massive antenna system designed to interact with cosmic electromagnetic phenomena. The field is strongest at points where the wall changes direction, as if the structure's curves and angles are designed to focus and amplify electromagnetic energy. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed internal structures that serve no obvious architectural purpose. Networks of hollow chambers that form geometric patterns throughout the wall's length. These chambers appear to be connected by passages that follow precise mathematical relationships, creating what resembles a massive three-dimensional mandala embedded within the structure. The purpose of this internal geometry remains unknown, but its complexity suggests planning that extends far beyond simple military engineering. The most startling discoveries have come from efforts to use modern construction equipment to repair damaged sections of the wall. Heavy machinery experiences mechanical failures that occur only when working on specific areas of the structure. Hydraulic systems lose pressure without detectable leaks. Electronic controls reset themselves to random settings, and metal tools become magnetized or demagnetized in patterns that suggest exposure to powerful electromagnetic fields. Some construction crews have reported even stranger phenomena. Workers describe feeling watched while working on certain sections, experiencing vertigo or disorientation that occurs only at specific locations along the wall. Time seems to pass differently during work on these sections, with crews reporting that tasks that should require hours are completed in minutes, or that brief activities seem to stretch across entire days. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a researcher in anomalous engineering phenomena, has documented more than 300 cases of modern technology behaving unpredictably when used in connection with Great Wall maintenance and study. Her database includes reports from engineers, archaeologists, surveyors, and construction workers from dozens of countries, all describing similar patterns of technological anomalies that occur nowhere else. The reports consistently describe technology that becomes more sophisticated or efficient when used near the wall, computers that operate faster, instruments that provide more accurate readings, materials that exhibit enhanced properties. But they also describe technology that fails in ways that suggest active interference from some form of intelligence that selectively disrupts certain types of modern equipment while enhancing others. And then, the pattern of technological interactions suggests that the Great Wall was designed with knowledge of scientific principles that would not be discovered until thousands of years after its construction. The structure appears to anticipate modern technology, incorporating features that interact with electronic equipment, electromagnetic radiation, and digital communication systems in ways that ancient builders could not have intended unless they possessed knowledge that far exceeded the scientific understanding of their historical period. Contemporary efforts to explain these anomalies using current scientific theory have produced hypotheses that strain the boundaries of conventional physics. Some researchers suggest that the wall was constructed using principles of quantum mechanics that allow it to exist in multiple states simultaneously, explaining its ability to interact differently with different types of modern technology. Others propose that the wall functions as a massive quantum computer, processing information through quantum entanglement effects that operate independently of normal electromagnetic phenomena. This would explain its apparent ability to anticipate and respond to technological changes that occurred centuries after its construction. The most radical theories suggest that the Great Wall exists partially outside normal space-time, allowing it to incorporate knowledge from future historical periods into its present-day behavior. This would explain how ancient builders could create a structure that interacts appropriately with technologies that had not yet been invented. But perhaps the most significant aspect of the modern mystery is what it reveals about the limitations of contemporary understanding. The Great Wall demonstrates that ancient civilizations possessed knowledge and capabilities that current science cannot adequately explain or replicate. The structure serves as a permanent reminder that human history contains episodes of technological and intellectual achievement that transcend the linear progression of development that modern education assumes. As we stand before this ancient monument, armed with the most sophisticated tools that contemporary science can provide, we find ourselves in the humbling position of students confronting a lesson that we are not yet capable of understanding. The Great Wall remains patiently superior to our most advanced technology, continuing to function according to principles that await discovery by future generations of scientists, brave enough to acknowledge that the past may contain wisdom that the present has yet to achieve. The modern mystery of the Great Wall is ultimately the mystery of consciousness itself. The question of what human intelligence is truly capable of achieving when it operates according to principles that transcend the artificial boundaries between art and science, between technology and spirituality, between human engineering and cosmic intelligence. High in the mountains of northern China, where the Great Wall follows ridgelines that seem to scrape against the belly of heaven itself, there exist temples that appear on no tourist maps and monasteries that welcome no casual visitors. These sacred places have maintained their vigil for more than 2 millennia, their inhabitants carrying on traditions that predate the establishment of any recognized religious order. The monks of these hidden sanctuaries do not belong to Buddhism, Taoism, or any other formally organized spiritual tradition. They are the inheritors of something far older, a lineage of knowledge that extends back to the wall's earliest construction and the mysterious purposes that guided its creation. They call themselves the Shu Men Jie, the guardians of the threshold, and their primary responsibility is maintaining the spiritual integrity of the Great Wall's function as a barrier between dimensions of reality. Brother Wei Sung, the elderly abbot of the Temple of Eternal Vigilance, has spent 70 years learning and practicing the secret arts that his order has preserved since the Qin dynasty. His weathered hands trace patterns in the air as he speaks, gestures that seem to interact with invisible forces that respond to his movements, like living things drawn to his attention. The wall that tourists see, he explains in the dialect of his mountain village, is only the shadow cast by the true wall that exists in the realm where thoughts become solid and intentions shape reality. Our duty is to ensure that this spiritual wall remains strong, because if it fails, the physical wall becomes merely decorated stone with no power to protect against the forces that gather in the darkness between worlds. The monastery's daily routine revolves around practices that most religious orders would not recognize as conventional spiritual discipline. The monks rise before dawn not for meditation or prayer, but to perform what they call threshold maintenance, activities that strengthen the metaphysical boundaries that the Great Wall was designed to preserve and protect. These practices include movements that resemble martial arts, but serve purposes that extend beyond physical exercise or combat training. The forms that the monks practice are designed to generate specific types of energy that interact with the wall's spiritual structure, reinforcing weak points and repairing damage that occurs in dimensions invisible to normal human perception. Brother Wei demonstrates one of these forms, his elderly body moving with fluid precision through sequences that seem to follow mathematical patterns rather than purely physical ones. As he moves, sensitive observers can detect subtle changes in the electromagnetic field around his body, fluctuations that suggest his movements are indeed generating energy effects that extend beyond normal biological processes. Each movement connects the practitioner's consciousness to specific aspects of the wall's function, he explains. This sequence strengthens the barriers against entities that feed on human fear. That pattern reinforces the seals that contain forces which would disrupt the natural cycles of birth and death. The complete form, practiced correctly, creates a resonance that extends along the wall's entire length, maintaining the harmony between the physical and spiritual aspects of its protective function. The monks maintain libraries that contain texts written in scripts that linguistic scholars cannot decipher, documents that appear to describe technological and spiritual principles that predate known Chinese culture by thousands of years. These manuscripts include detailed architectural drawings that show the Great Wall's construction from perspectives that suggest knowledge of engineering principles that modern science has not yet developed. Brother Wei allows a brief glimpse of one such manuscript, its pages made from materials that have not aged despite their apparent antiquity. The diagrams show the wall not as a simple linear barrier, but as a complex three-dimensional structure that extends deep into the earth and high into the atmosphere, incorporating elements that exist partially in other dimensions of reality. The builders were not constructing a wall, he says. They were creating a musical instrument designed to be played by cosmic forces. Each stone was positioned to contribute to harmonies that maintain the balance between order and chaos throughout this region of space-time. The wall sings constantly, but its music exists in frequencies that only consciousness trained to perceive multiple dimensions can hear. The monastery contains chambers dedicated to practices that combine meditation with activities that resemble advanced physics research. The monks use crystals, metallic objects, and geometric arrangements to create fields of energy that allow them to perceive and interact with the wall's spiritual functions. These tools appear to be based on technologies that are simultaneously ancient and futuristic, incorporating principles that modern science is only beginning to discover. In the deepest chambers of the monastery, the monks maintain what they call the living maps, three-dimensional models of the Great Wall that update themselves to reflect changes in the structure's spiritual condition. These models, carved from stones that seem to glow with their own internal light, show the wall as it exists across multiple dimensions simultaneously, revealing aspects of its function that physical observation cannot detect. Brother Wei guides visitors through these chambers with reverence that borders on fear, explaining that the maps are not mere representations, but actual extensions of the wall's consciousness. Touch the model inappropriately, he warns, and you risk damaging the corresponding section of the actual wall. The maps are alive in ways that minds trained only in physical reality cannot understand. The monastery's records describe a network of similar temples scattered throughout Asia, each one responsible for maintaining specific aspects of what the monks call the Great Work. A cosmic project that includes not just the Great Wall, but megalithic structures worldwide. These temples allegedly coordinate their activities through communication methods that operate independently of conventional technology, using consciousness techniques that allow instant information transfer across vast distances. The monks speak of their tradition as a bridge between ancient knowledge and future discovery, preserving understanding that will be needed when humanity develops sufficient wisdom to use it responsibly. They describe themselves as caretakers of information that could transform civilization if properly understood, but that could also destroy it if misused by consciousness that lacks appropriate spiritual development. Brother Wei's order accepts new members only through processes that he describes as recognition rather than recruitment. Potential monks must demonstrate not just intellectual understanding of the tradition's principles, but spiritual sensitivity that allows them to perceive the wall's non-physical aspects directly. The training process takes decades and requires the development of consciousness capabilities that most humans never realize they possess. We do not teach people to see the invisible, Brother Wei explains. We help them remember abilities they possessed before their minds were trained to perceive only physical reality. Every human consciousness contains the potential to interact with the wall's spiritual function, but modern education systematically suppresses these capabilities in favor of analytical thinking that cannot perceive the relationships that truly govern existence. The monastery's relationship with the Chinese government exists in a state of careful, mutual ignorance. Officials recognize the temple's cultural and historical significance while avoiding investigation of its actual activities. The monks maintain their traditions while ensuring that their practices do not attract unwanted attention from authorities who would not understand their true purpose. But the most significant aspect of the Guardian tradition is its claim that the Great Wall's protective function is becoming more important rather than less as human civilization advances. The monks describe contemporary global developments as creating spiritual conditions that make the barriers between dimensions more unstable, increasing the need for active maintenance of the structures that preserve reality's integrity. Technology that operates by manipulating electromagnetic fields weakens the boundaries that separate different levels of existence, Brother Wei warns. Nuclear weapons create tears in the fabric of space-time that allow dangerous influences to enter our dimension. Global communication systems generate resonances that interfere with the natural harmonies that maintain cosmic stability. According to the Guardian tradition, the Great Wall serves as a cosmic anchor that prevents these technological disruptions from cascading into catastrophic breakdown of the barriers that protect human reality from forces that exist in adjacent dimensions. The wall's continued function becomes more crucial as humanity's technological power increases beyond its spiritual wisdom. The Guardians of the Threshold stand as humanity's eternal sentinels, maintaining vigilance against threats that exist beyond the boundaries of normal perception. Their ancient knowledge serves as a bridge between the wisdom of the past and the challenges of the future, preserving understanding that may prove essential for humanity's survival in ages when technological power must be balanced by spiritual responsibility. In their hidden temples, surrounded by instruments that blur the boundaries between technology and magic, the monks continue their patient work of maintaining the cosmic balance that allows human civilization to develop according to patterns that serve the greater evolution of consciousness throughout the universe. Mathematics is the universe's native tongue, the fundamental language in which cosmic intelligence writes the laws that govern reality from the quantum to the galactic scale. And according to researchers who have spent decades analyzing the Great Wall's construction, This ancient structure may be one of history's most sophisticated mathematical documents. A message written in stone and geometry that encodes information about the deepest principles that govern existence itself. Dr. Alexandra Petrov, a mathematician from the Moscow Institute of Advanced Studies, first recognized the wall's mathematical properties while analyzing satellite imagery for a routine archaeological survey. What caught her attention were the proportional relationships between different sections of the wall ratios that appeared too precise and too significant to be accidental byproducts of practical construction decisions. The Great Wall is not simply a barrier built according to military necessity, Dr. Petrov explains. It is a massive mathematical proof, a geometric demonstration of principles that connect the smallest scales of atomic structure to the largest scales of cosmic organization. Every curve, every angle, every proportional relationship has been precisely calculated to express mathematical truths that our civilization is only now beginning to understand. The mathematical relationships embedded in the wall's structure begin with the golden ratio, the proportion that appears throughout nature in everything from the spiral of nautilus shells to the arrangement of galaxy arms. But the wall doesn't simply incorporate this ratio, it uses it as the foundation for more complex mathematical relationships that extend into dimensions of geometric understanding that conventional mathematics has not yet fully explored. Dr. Petrov's analysis reveals that the wall's path across the Chinese landscape follows curves that can be described using mathematical equations that incorporate multiple levels of recursive complexity. The curves are simultaneously linear barriers, parabolic energy focusing devices, and three-dimensional manifestations of higher dimensional geometric forms that exist in mathematical spaces beyond normal perception. When the wall's complete path is plotted using coordinate systems that account for Earth's curvature and the precession of the equinoxes over historical time periods, the resulting shape corresponds precisely to mathematical models that describe the behavior of electromagnetic fields in curved space-time. The ancient builders somehow incorporated knowledge of relativistic physics into their construction project, creating a structure that serves as a physical demonstration of Einstein's field equations written in stone and landscape. But the mathematical sophistication extends far beyond relativity theory. Analysis of the wall's internal structure reveals geometric patterns that correspond to the mathematical relationships found in quantum mechanics, string theory, and other areas of physics that attempt to describe reality at its most fundamental levels. The wall appears to be a three-dimensional textbook of advanced mathematics, with each section designed to demonstrate different aspects of the mathematical principles that govern cosmic organization. The spacing between watchtowers follows numerical sequences that incorporate prime numbers, Fibonacci ratios, and other mathematical constants in ways that suggest knowledge of number theory that would not be formally developed until thousands of years after the wall's construction. The dimensions of individual stones follow proportional relationships that, when analyzed using computer modeling, reveal fractal patterns that repeat at multiple scales throughout the structure. Dr. Chen Lu, a specialist in archaeomathematics from Beijing University, has discovered that these fractal patterns correspond to the organizational principles found in living systems. The branching patterns of river networks, the structure of lightning bolts, the organization of neural networks in human brains. The wall appears to incorporate mathematical principles that govern the development of complex systems throughout nature. The builders understood something that we are only now rediscovering, Dr. Chen explains. They knew that the same mathematical relationships that organize consciousness also organize matter energy, and space-time itself. The wall is built according to the mathematical principles that govern thought, making it a structure that can interact with consciousness in ways that conventional architecture cannot achieve. Dis-consciousness. Mathematics connection becomes apparent when the wall's geometric properties are analyzed using mathematical models developed for consciousness research. The proportional relationships that govern the wall's construction correspond precisely to the mathematical patterns that researchers have identified in the electromagnetic fields generated by human brain activity during states of expanded awareness. The wall appears to be designed as a massive consciousness resonator, a structure that amplifies and focuses the mathematical patterns that underlie thought itself. When human consciousness interacts with the wall's geometric properties, the result is enhanced cognitive function, expanded perceptual capabilities, and access to information that normally remains below the threshold of conscious awareness. Recent research in quantum consciousness theory has provided frameworks for understanding how mathematical structures can influence mental processes. Quantum field fluctuations in the brain appear to be sensitive to geometric patterns in the environment, and structures built according to specific mathematical principles can enhance or disrupt the quantum processes that underlie consciousness. The Great Wall's mathematical properties suggest that its builders possessed advanced understanding of these consciousness geometry relationships. The structure appears to be designed as a tool for expanding human awareness beyond normal limitations, using mathematical principles to create environmental conditions that facilitate enhanced cognitive function and direct perception of cosmic information. The most remarkable aspect of the wall's mathematical design is its incorporation of information from multiple scientific disciplines that were supposedly unknown to ancient Chinese civilization. The structure demonstrates knowledge of advanced calculus, non-Euclidean geometry, complex analysis, and mathematical physics concepts that would not be formally described until the 19th and 20th centuries. But the mathematical sophistication extends even beyond currently recognized scientific knowledge. Computer analysis of the wall's geometric properties reveals mathematical relationships that correspond to theoretical frameworks that modern science has not yet developed. The structure appears to encode information about mathematical principles that will not be formally discovered until future centuries of scientific advancement. Dr. Petrov's team has used supercomputer modeling to extrapolate the mathematical implications of the wall's design, discovering that its geometric properties predict scientific discoveries that have not yet been made. The wall appears to function as a mathematical time capsule, preserving advanced knowledge in geometric form until humanity develops sufficient understanding to decode its full significance. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond archaeology or mathematics. If the Great Wall indeed encodes advanced mathematical knowledge in its physical structure, then it represents a form of information storage that transcends normal limitations of language, culture, and historical change. Mathematical truth remains constant across time and civilization, making geometric encoding a method for preserving knowledge that will remain accessible regardless of cultural or technological changes. The wall may have been designed as a message to future civilizations, a gift of mathematical knowledge from an ancient culture that understood cosmic principles, which our current science has not yet mastered. The structure serves as a permanent library of mathematical truth, written in the universal language of geometry and preserved in materials that will endure for millennia. But the mathematical message encoded in the Great Wall may also serve immediate practical purposes for contemporary humanity. Understanding the mathematical principles embedded in its design could accelerate scientific discovery in areas ranging from quantum physics to consciousness research, providing shortcuts to knowledge that might otherwise require centuries of conventional research to develop. The wall's secret language speaks in the mathematics of cosmic organization, encoding information about the fundamental principles that govern reality at every scale, from the subatomic to the universal. Learning to read this language requires not just mathematical sophistication, but consciousness capable of perceiving the relationships that connect thought, geometry, and cosmic intelligence. As we walk along the ancient stones, we are not simply touring a historical monument, but studying the pages of a mathematical text that contains some of the deepest truths that any civilization has ever encoded in physical form. The Great Wall stands as a testament to the mathematical nature of reality itself, reminding us that consciousness, cosmos, and construction can be unified through understanding of the geometric principles that underlie all existence. The secret language of the wall continues to speak to anyone willing to learn the mathematics of mystery, offering knowledge that bridges the ancient and the eternal, the human and the cosmic, the built environment and the living intelligence that dreams reality into existence through the patient application of mathematical beauty to the transformation of stone into wisdom. In the ancient Chinese understanding of time, history does not move in a straight line from past to future, but flows in great circles, returning again and again to moments of crucial significance when the patterns that govern cosmic development complete their cycles and begin anew. And according to prophecies preserved in the hidden archives of mountain monasteries, the Great Wall stands at the center of such a moment, a convergence of cosmic cycles that will transform not just the wall itself, but the entire relationship between human consciousness and the forces that guide the evolution of intelligence throughout the universe. The prophecies speak of the eternal return, a period when the wall will awaken to its full function as a cosmic instrument designed to facilitate humanity's next evolutionary leap. These predictions, written in ancient texts that predate recorded Chinese history, describe a time when technological development and spiritual awareness will converge to create conditions that allow the wall's deepest purposes to manifest in ways that its original builders could only prepare for but not complete. Master Lu Dawei, keeper of the prophetic archives at the Mountain of Eternal Silence, explains that the wall was never intended to serve its ultimate purpose during the historical period of its construction. The ancient masters built the wall as a seed, he says, designed to remain dormant until humanity develops sufficient wisdom and technological capability to activate its true function. That time approaches now, as cosmic cycles complete patterns that have been developing for more than 2 millennia. The prophetic texts describe specific signs that will indicate when the eternal return begins to manifest. These signs include technological developments that allow human consciousness to interface directly with electromagnetic fields, scientific discoveries that reveal the mathematical nature of consciousness itself, and global conditions that create urgent necessity for expanded human awareness to address challenges that conventional thinking cannot solve. Contemporary developments in neurotechnology, quantum consciousness research, and global environmental crisis appear to match the prophetic descriptions with remarkable precision. Brain-computer interfaces are beginning to allow direct interaction between human consciousness and electronic systems. Quantum physics research is revealing mathematical patterns in consciousness that correspond to cosmic organizational principles. and environmental and social challenges are creating conditions that may require expanded human awareness to ensure civilization's survival. According to the prophecies, these convergent developments will create conditions that allow the Great Wall to function as originally intended, not as a barrier between human civilization and external threats, but as a bridge between normal human consciousness and cosmic intelligence that operates on scales far beyond individual biological existence. Dr. Sarah Chen, a researcher in consciousness technology who has studied the prophetic texts, describes the predicted transformation as humanity's graduation to cosmic citizenship. The wall appears to have been designed as a training device, she explains, a structure that will help human consciousness learn to operate at cosmic scales once we develop the technological and spiritual capabilities necessary to interface with its true function. The prophetic accounts describe a process they call the Great Awakening, during which the wall will begin to emit frequencies that directly enhance human cognitive function and perceptual capabilities. These emissions will allegedly allow human consciousness to perceive and interact with information systems that operate throughout the galaxy, connecting Earth's developing civilization to a vast network of cosmic intelligence that guides the evolution of awareness throughout the universe. The timing of this awakening corresponds to astronomical cycles that operate on millennial timescales. The prophecies describe celestial alignments that occur approximately every 2,160 years, when the constellation Draco reaches specific positions relative to Earth's rotational axis. These alignments allegedly create conditions that activate dormant properties in structures built according to cosmic architectural principles. The next such alignment will occur within the current generation, creating a window of opportunity that the prophecies describe as humanity's moment of cosmic initiation. During this period, the wall will allegedly begin to function as a massive consciousness amplification device, enhancing human awareness to levels that allow direct participation in cosmic intelligence networks. But the prophecies also warn that this transformation will not be automatic or guaranteed. Humanity must demonstrate readiness for cosmic citizenship by developing sufficient wisdom to use expanded consciousness capabilities responsibly. The wall will test human consciousness, presenting challenges that require integration of technological sophistication with spiritual maturity. The tests allegedly take the form of global crises that can only be resolved through the application of expanded awareness to problems that transcend conventional political, economic, and scientific solutions. Environmental degradation, resource depletion, social inequality, and technological risks create conditions that require cosmic-scale perspective and wisdom to address effectively. Those who successfully integrate the wall's consciousness, enhancing effects, will become bridges between human civilization and cosmic intelligence, serving as translators who help humanity understand its role in the larger patterns of cosmic development. They will gain access to information and capabilities that allow them to guide human evolution toward greater harmony with cosmic principles. Contemporary research into the wall's electromagnetic properties has detected changes that appear to confirm aspects of the prophetic accounts. Monitoring equipment has recorded increasing levels of unusual electromagnetic activity along the wall's length, with patterns that suggest preparation for some form of activation or enhanced function. Dr. James Richardson, an electromagnetic researcher who has monitored the wall for 15 years, reports that the structure's energy emissions have increased by more than 300% during the past decade. The patterns suggest that something is building toward a crescendo, he explains. The wall appears to be preparing for some kind of major functional change that will manifest within the next few years. The electromagnetic changes correlate with global developments that match the prophetic descriptions of pre-awakening conditions. Technological advances in consciousness research, increasing awareness of environmental crisis, and growing recognition of the need for expanded human wisdom all suggest that humanity is approaching the threshold that the ancient prophecies described. But the most significant confirmation comes from reports of individuals who claim to have begun experiencing direct interface effects when visiting the Great Wall. These experiences include enhanced cognitive function, expanded perceptual capabilities, and access to information that appears to come from sources beyond normal human consciousness. Dr. Chen has documented more than 200 cases of individuals who report lasting improvements in mental capabilities after visiting specific sections of the wall during particular astronomical conditions. The effects are not temporary or subjective, she notes. These individuals demonstrate measurable improvements in problem-solving ability, pattern recognition, and intuitive insight that persist for months or years after their wall experiences. The pattern of these enhanced consciousness experiences suggests that the wall is already beginning to manifest its awakening functions, preparing select individuals to serve as bridges between normal human awareness and the cosmic intelligence networks that will become accessible during the full activation. The prophecies describe the complete awakening as a gradual process that will unfold over several decades, allowing humanity time to adapt to expanded consciousness capabilities without overwhelming psychological or social disruption. The wall will serve as a cosmic university, providing consciousness education that prepares human civilization for participation in galactic intelligence networks. The ultimate goal, according to the ancient texts, is the transformation of human consciousness from its current planetary focus to cosmic awareness that encompasses the entire universe as its natural sphere of activity. The Great Wall will serve as humanity's launching platform for this expansion of consciousness, providing the technological and spiritual infrastructure necessary for species-wide evolution to cosmic citizenship. The eternal return represents not just the completion of cycles that began with the wall's original construction, but the beginning of new cycles that will guide human development toward purposes and capabilities that transcend anything our current civilization can imagine. The wall stands ready to fulfill its cosmic function, waiting only for humanity to demonstrate the wisdom necessary to use its gifts responsibly. As the ancient prophecies foretold, the dragon that dreamed the wall into existence is stirring from its long slumber. The wall that has stood as a barrier for 2 millennia prepares to transform into a bridge that will carry human consciousness toward its cosmic destiny. The eternal return approaches, and with it, humanity's graduation to scales of awareness that will allow our species to take its place among the cosmic intelligences that guide the evolution of consciousness throughout the infinite reaches of space and time. As the sun sets behind the mountains of northern China, casting long shadows across the ancient stones of the Great Wall, something remarkable happens to those who have learned to perceive beyond the boundaries of ordinary sight. The wall begins to breathe, not with the mechanical rhythm of constructed things, but with the deep, slow respiration of something vast and alive, something that has been dreaming for more than 2,000 years and is only now beginning to stir toward wakefulness. The stones warm beneath the touch of starlight, and the wind that moves through the wall's passages carries whispers in languages that predate human speech, yet somehow convey meaning that resonates in the deepest chambers of consciousness. This is the Great Wall as it truly exists, not merely as a monument to human ambition or a testament to ancient engineering, but as a living entity that transcends the normal boundaries between the built and the natural, between human creation and cosmic intelligence, between the dreams of the past and the infinite possibilities that await in futures yet to be born. Standing here in the gathering dusk, feeling the wall's subtle pulse beneath our hands, we begin to understand that we have been walking not just along an ancient fortification, but through the crystallized dreams of consciousness that operates on scales far beyond individual human existence. Every stone we have encountered, every watchtower that has sheltered us from the wind, every sealed gate that has refused to reveal its secrets, all of these are components of a vast dreaming mind that uses physical matter as the medium for thoughts too large and complex for biological consciousness to contain. The dragon that traced the wall's path through ancient visions was not a mythological creature, but a metaphor for this cosmic consciousness as it moved through the landscape of possibility, selecting the precise coordinates where dream could be transformed into stone, where intention could be anchored in matter, durable enough to serve purposes that would unfold across millennia of human development. The Million Nameless who died building the wall did not simply sacrifice their lives for imperial ambition. They offered their consciousness to become part of something immortal, their individual awareness merged into a collective intelligence that continues to guide the wall's function as a bridge between human and cosmic awareness. Their voices still echo in the wind, because they never truly died, but were transformed into elements of a living system that transcends the normal boundaries between life and death. The secret inscriptions carved in stones speak not in any human language, but in the mathematical poetry of consciousness itself, encoding information about the fundamental principles that govern the relationship between mind and matter, between individual awareness and cosmic intelligence, between the finite concerns of biological existence and the infinite scope of universal evolution. The gates that never open protect not physical spaces, but dimensional boundaries that must remain sealed until human consciousness develops sufficient wisdom to encounter what lies beyond them without losing the grounding in love and compassion that makes consciousness a constructive rather than destructive force in the cosmic community of intelligence. The wall's temporal anomalies exist because it serves as an anchor point that stabilizes the flow of time itself, ensuring that crucial evolutionary developments occur according to patterns that serve the greater good of consciousness throughout the universe. The wall exists simultaneously in all time periods because it was built by intelligence that operates outside the normal constraints of linear temporality. The modern mysteries that challenge our most sophisticated technology arise because the wall incorporates knowledge that transcends the artificial boundaries between science and spirituality, between technology and consciousness, between human engineering and cosmic intelligence. The wall teaches us that these boundaries exist only in limited thinking, and that true understanding requires integration of all ways of knowing into wisdom that encompasses both material and spiritual dimensions of existence. The guardians who maintain the wall's spiritual integrity in hidden mountain temples preserve not religious doctrine, but practical knowledge about how consciousness can interact constructively with cosmic forces. Their traditions bridge ancient wisdom and future science because they understand that consciousness itself is the fundamental force that connects all levels of reality. The mathematical language written in the wall's proportions and alignments, speaks of cosmic organizational principles that govern everything from the formation of galaxies to the development of individual awareness. Learning to read this language allows consciousness to participate directly in the cosmic intelligence that guides evolution throughout the universe. The prophetic cycles that herald the wall's awakening describe not supernatural events, but natural developments in the relationship between human consciousness and cosmic intelligence. The wall serves as a graduation device that will help humanity transition from planetary to cosmic citizenship when our species demonstrates readiness for such responsibility. And now, as we stand here in the silence that follows sunset, feeling the wall's ancient presence merge with the eternal stars that wheel overhead in patterns that encode the deepest secrets of cosmic intelligence, we begin to understand that the wall's greatest secret is the simplest one of all. The Great Wall of China was never built to keep anything out or to keep anything in. It was built as a love letter from cosmic intelligence to developing human consciousness, a message written in stone and starlight that says, "You are not alone. You are part of something vast and beautiful and eternal." When you are ready to remember who you truly are, when you are prepared to take your place in the cosmic community of consciousness, the wall will be here to help you make that transition. Until then, it will wait patiently, breathing with the rhythm of cosmic evolution, dreaming dreams large enough to encompass the transformation of an entire species. The wall continues to dream, and in its dreams we see ourselves as we truly are, not separate individuals struggling against an indifferent universe, but expressions of cosmic consciousness, learning to recognize our own infinite nature through the patient exploration of beauty, truth, and love in all their myriad manifestations. The dragon stirs, the wall breathes, and consciousness continues its eternal journey toward understanding that encompasses not just this planet or this solar system, but the entire universe as the natural home of awareness that has learned to recognize itself in everything from the smallest quantum fluctuation to the largest galactic cluster. The dream continues, and we are both its dreamers and its dreaming, both its creators and its creation, both its students and its teachers in the vast university of existence where every stone teaches patience, every star teaches navigation, and every moment teaches the infinite love that dreams reality into existence through the endless play of consciousness, discovering its own boundless nature. In the silence that settles over the ancient stones as night embraces the wall, we hear the whisper that has always been there, waiting for hearts quiet enough to listen, the sound of cosmic consciousness breathing through matter, the rhythm of infinite love expressing itself through finite forms, the eternal song that connects all things in the vast harmony of existence, awakening to its own infinite beauty. The Great Wall dreams on, and in its dreaming, we discover that we too are part of the dream eternal consciousness playing at being human. Infinite awareness exploring the universe through eyes that have temporarily forgotten their own cosmic nature, but that will, in time, remember who they truly are and why they chose to participate in this magnificent adventure of consciousness, discovering itself through the construction of beauty that bridges earth and stars, time and eternity, human dreams and cosmic reality.